this pencast, we're going to be solving quadratic equations in the complex number system. This problem says solve x squared minus 2x plus 5 equals 0 over the complex numbers. Alright, so if we had x squared minus 2x plus 5 equals 0, the first thing we would probably try to do would be to factor that equation. But since it says we're going to be working with complex numbers here, we know we're not going to be able to factor. So let's use the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is this. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So in our case, a is going to be equal to 1, since that's a coefficient of x squared. B is going to be negative 2, since that's a coefficient of x. And c is going to be equal to 5, which is the constant. So let's plug those in. So we get x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5 all over 2 times 1. So the first thing we should do is try to simplify under the square root. So we get x equals 2, because 2 negatives is a positive. So 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared, which is 4, minus 4 times 1 times 5, which is 20, all over 2 times 1. Alright, so let's simplify even further, and we get 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 16 all over 2. Alright, so we know we can't take the square root of negative 16, so this is where the complex numbers come in. So let's take the square root of negative 16 over here to simplify it. So we could change that into the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 16, right? And we know that I squared is equal to negative 1, right? So this is the same as saying the square root of I squared times the square root of 16, which is the same as saying I times the square root of 16. Alright, so that's good. So let's go back to our original problem now. So we can rewrite that saying 2 plus or minus the square root of 16 times I. And we change the order just because the I always goes last. And then we have that over 2. We know that the square root of 16 is just 4. So we can simplify this now to 2 plus or minus 4I over 2. Alright. So we can cancel out a 2 on the top, and we get x equals 1 plus or minus 2i. So that means our answers are x equals 1 plus 2i and 1 minus 2i.